The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It is Thursday, the 18th of June, 2026. This is Financial Rebellion, and we're live here at CHD TV with Renette Sunham and Carolyn Betts. No Catherine this week.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We can go rogue. Catherine's not here. All right. So first, just to tell our viewers, tomorrow we have an amazing story. Lance Castle is a major feature in Duty to Disobey. And many of you may remember, he's the guy that got taken out, as you can see in that picture on the right, of confinement and pretty messed up. It's a horrible clip, but he is going to do his full story tomorrow. So you get a little bit of an insight into Duty to Disobey. But this guy is an amazing human being. And so we're very excited to have this exclusive with Lance Council tomorrow on CHD TV. And do not forget Duty to Disobey film.com. We're on serious countdown to get our tickets for your local theatre. Renette and Carolyn, I hope you have tickets to your local theatre.
We actually, I don't know if we purchased the tickets yet, but we have a group of people going down to Sacramento area for sure. We're making a field day out of it.
Great, good stuff, Carolyn.
I believe the closest one to me, which is in northern Kentucky, didn't get enough people signing up. But I'm going to look.
There were a few that did not tip. All right, well, it'll be online at some point, but for now, we're just really excited about this one night. Around the country, over 130 theatres, and we just need to fill those seats, please, everyone.
Right.
And also, just to tell everybody, I hope you're signed up for your breaking news alerts for CHD TV, just as one specifically for CHD TV, because we do have breaking news coming out today at some point from Senator Ron Johnson. So make sure you're signed up for that, and then you'll be able to click on that text alert and go straight to it. But anyway, let's get on with our show today, because this is going to be a good show. We've got a term of the day, which, Carolyn, I think you're going to do.
Yes. We're sort of proceeding in the same line of talk about the encroaching control grid that we started last week. And you don't have to have looked at last week's show, but we presented 4 different scenarios of maybe the parts of our lives where we are and where we might be going in the future. And in the scenario planning discipline, you take 2 opposite ends of 2 different possibilities, 2 different things you want to consider as in building scenarios, and we selected centralization and decentralization. So that's the horizontal, that's the vertical line, and then we took benevolent control of technology versus complete digital control grid, where the more insidious part, and then when you take the right hand and the bottom, you put those together, for example. So we've got a scenario that's 15-minute cities, which is an oppressive control grid, but that's administered at the decentralized level. So you put the 2 together, and that's how you get the 4 scenarios. We talked about plunder, and we've talked about plunder a lot of times on Financial Rebellion. The WEF, you'll be happy and you'll own nothing kind of thing. And we talked a little bit about pushback, but and the decentralization with benevolent tech last week. But Renette's going to give us some ideas as someone who was a mayor of a city. And then, but we didn't go through the other 2, so I'm going to go through the other 2. The Truman Show, the background on the Truman Show, and I have not actually seen the movie, but I've read enough about it. It was made in 1990. And it's about a guy who's living in a movie set and doesn't know it. So he's got things happening in his life that are efficient and good and meeting his needs, but he doesn't know that he's a slave, basically. And so that's what we chose to call the scenario. And this is one of the scenarios that is perhaps the most insidious, because you might think of it as this is where the people are who don't know, are not awake, who don't know what the control grid is doing to their lives, because they're kind of bought off by having things taken care of, more efficiency. It's easier to use a credit card than pay cash. They're not seeing the downside of being spied upon, and believe the news media that says, oh, we're doing all these flock cameras in order to make it safer for you. So that is one of the questions is, how do you wake people up? Or maybe we don't, but just be aware that the insidiousness of that, of people not knowing that they are slaves, is hard to wake them up if they're being taken care of and they see the technology as benevolent, and that the government is good and nobody's going to use it to their detriment. And so you get to the point where you wonder whether, gee, is it too late? Because we see this encroaching control grid. Polly, does that make sense to you as somebody who wasn't here last week?
Yes, I was not here last week. But my question is, how much are we already living in a Truman Show scenario?
Well, they thought in 1990 that we were.
Well, I mean, we are, because the basis of the Truman Show too is, right, he's even in utero, a corporation owns him, so his birth is being, publicized and being monitored and surveilled, and it's, everyone's watching the screens and all the way throughout his life. And how they control him is through fear, right? Fear and fear of death. And if you go there, your plane will crash. If this happens, you're going to drown. You can't do that, and your life is good enough. And so, everyone's watching these screens, and these screens are telling them this is your reality, and nobody questions that reality. And then they end up going, the people themselves, once they see this, they reinforce that reality by repeating it over and over and saying, yes, it's really great. This is our life, this is our world, it's perfect, it can't be any better. Don't ask questions, don't push back, don't question this reality, this presentation. And so it's almost like this feedback loop that you're in. And so when you look at it, especially with COVID, through the eyes of COVID, especially in America, we were the ones who I believe were the most vaccinated of any nation in the world. And we also have like the biggest fear of death. It's like a big taboo subject. And so in the Truman Show, Truman sees his father drown in the sea, and they're like, oh yeah, you can't go sailing, you can't go off this island, you can't go somewhere else, it's too dangerous, you'll die. And so it's really kind of sets up the scenario that we're living in today, very much so. And so nobody questions what is presented to them. And that's what happens in the Truman Show, is whatever's on the screen, that is your reality, and you just repeat it and reinforce it. So it's not just the screen reinforcing it, it's the friends, it's the girlfriend, it's the parents. They all reinforce that same narrative without question, which is very much what we're doing today. So and as you said, this was 20 years ago. So
yeah, and we all experienced what happened during the so-called pandemic, and there were people who could see through what was going on, and that there was a plan that was coordinated, that was administered by the military, that was putting people in hospitals and killing them. But there was a whole segment of the society that was and the media was all part of it. The media was completely controlled in the stories, anyway. And so there were a whole segment of society that didn't know they were living in something that was made up.
Right.
And they're watching our every move, aren't they? I mean, they can. You were just talking about how you cover up your camera before on your thing, and then Catherine's always been going on about how televisions these days are basically just watching us. So I don't know. It feels to me like we're already deep in it.
Right. We are deep in it, and I have to say that the good news is And once again, this is the reality is when it gets onto your doorstep, that's when people become activists essentially. And so with the flock cameras, all of a sudden people are becoming very, very aware of this surveillance, right? It's like, wait a second, this is not our law enforcement, surveilling us to protect us. This is a private corporation that's collecting this data, and what are they doing with it? In fact, I saw a great quote the other day. It was, people do not choose rebellion, it's forced upon them. Revolution is always an act of self-defense. And all of a sudden, people are realizing, wait a second, this surveillance system, this control grid that we've heard about coming in is on our doorsteps. And now people are seeing these flock cameras and it's getting real. Same thing with the data centers. It's getting real. And so it has been going on for decades, Polly, and it's increasing exponentially. But now all of a sudden people are seeing it manifest on their doorstep, and it's making them really, really uncomfortable, and it's activating them, which is actually really good news.
Yeah, Lou, we've got a clip, and this is sort of elements of 15-minute city, because local control is bringing in the drones and approving the data centers and having the flock cameras surveilling us and coordinating with the local law enforcement. But it's also sort of Truman Show, because people are being told, well, it's so unsafe out there. There are all these criminals, and this is solving the problem. This is keeping you safe from the criminals. But Lou, do you want to play the recording on that? Just to show you how quickly.
Bernalillo County 911. What is the location of the emergency?
Hi, I have a guy who just pulled out a gun on me. I'm going northbound on 2nd Street. He's in a black Dually.
2nd Street and where now?
2nd Street. I just passed Paseo. We are approaching Osuna. License plate
right,
0972. It's a black Dually. He did pull into 7043 2nd Street, Green Acres Community Home. He is a fat, male, bald, Hispanic. He was wearing a black bandana and a black shirt.
Okay, and he didn't fire at you, nothing like that? You don't have any injuries, nothing like that?
No, I slammed my brakes. He did fire his weapon. I slammed my brakes to where he could not get me.
He fired at you?
Yes, he did. He shot his gun outside of his vehicle.
Okay, did it make contact with your vehicle, or do you have any injuries?
It did not make contact with my vehicle. I do not have any injuries.
Our talk to those units and up to the subject. We have the drone overview on that. It's going to be space number 62. We have eyes on a SMA. It's going to be black over tan. We can confirm it's a Ford F-350. You just passed the vehicle.
Yeah, I'm flipping off. And the plate's completely faded out. 320, approaching the 10 route, ramp 54.
The drone is up and overhead, and we have video of the 1080 as well as locating the vehicle. Our talk to the units on scene. Can you secure your mic?
Now, my SO's direct on your 49. 320. So we have 2 to 10. You can send it there. Vehicle's clear. So units from the 8, so just clear at 1403, and you guys are direct on the 1080 on the dash.
So the point here is, well, yeah, they caught the criminal, but look at how long it took, what kind of film recording they had available almost immediately. And gee, what if they were using this for some reason that, to go after somebody who's a whistleblower or, and they're collecting all this information. So there was also another similar thing going around the internet of people who were fighting each other in the middle of a highway, a road rage incident, and they were sending out drones almost immediately. So you see that the enforcement mechanism at the local level, particularly with people calling in, your neighbors calling in, and not everybody's neighbors are doing it for good reasons. And an almost immediate descending upon people through the drones, which might be equipped with guns. I mean, we haven't gotten there yet, but
a lot of people watching that video that'll think that was great. Oh, I'm so glad they've got those flock cameras.
That's Truman Show.
For that, the English family, they'd be just like, brilliant.
Well, and that's the reality they're creating. There's like, see, we got the bad person, the criminal. We're protecting you, and so they use that as the carrot. Like, see how good this is. But it's like, yeah, but at what cost? Which is your privacy and freedom to travel without being surveilled and completely, data collected on who you're with and where you're going, and also, you know. How abused can that system get if this woman had let's say she had a road rage incident and it did not involve a gun. She just made that up. And the next thing you know, this guy goes home and he's being swarmed by law enforcement. They think he has a gun and he doesn't. She just made it up. It's like the SWAT calls. You know how they have the SWAT calls where somebody like, hey, there's somebody being held up and kidnapped and they're being held by gunpoint inside a house. SWAT team comes in and they find out it was all fake, right? Very dangerous. And so there's so many different ways it can go wrong, as you mentioned, Carolyn. So you're seeing this guy being chased down by law enforcement, but what if he is a whistleblower? What if
Right.
he's a person who's calling out Palantir? What if he's a person who's calling out some kind of criminality going on? And yet they're like, oh, there's that bad guy. And they portray it as, oh, good, they got that bad guy, when they don't realize this person's actually going out there and trying to alert the public to something that's going on. And so,
Well, and the more AI and automatic things happen, the fewer opportunities for a human being to look at the situation and fix it before something disastrous happens. And the other thing is we've had several reports just this week of local police officers they're finding that the police officers have gone into the flock cameras 100 times looking at their girlfriends or their ex-girlfriends and spying on them. Well, this can be used for stalking, which arguably that's stalking even if it's a current girlfriend, if you're looking at where she is 170 times,
yeah, right.
So
I just have to say, I find it very disturbing, especially as a mother of an autistic adult, a 30-year-old young man, which honestly, we're really careful about where we take him now because of the way the world is. But you can see a scenario like that going drastically wrong with an adult like my son, Billy. People don't understand. They call it in. He's talking to himself. He's doing crazy things. And before you know it, they're taken out as well. I mean, there's so many Billies in this world.
And maybe they're feeding information into AI that's not taking into consideration the fact that he's not, that he has deficits and is doing things for reasons that AI doesn't recognize as well, I don't want to say normal, but doesn't understand the implications of.
Right. Well, there are also now cases where they're seeing in these electrical boxes, because cities know, and this is a doozy, cities know people don't like the flock cameras. So they've actually found that there's these electrical boxes on poles that are actually inside of them are the cameras, the surveillance cameras, and they have them hidden in an electrical box. So from the outside, it looks like it's an electrical box, and inside is actually a surveillance camera, which is just next level. And I mean, anybody who's allowing that in their city should be fired automatically. But that's how bad it's getting. So I think that there's definitely things we can do at a local level. And again, we have been living in a Truman Show for a long, long time, and people are now waking up to it. So this, as frustrating as it's been for many of us over the years, there is a crescendo of awareness happening because it's on our doorstep. So really, as frightful as the world kind of seems, it's like it's been like this for a long, long time. You're just becoming aware of it.
Right. Now, I have a list of things that might characterize the Truman Show reality of living in the Truman Show. And like economic life, the payment stablecoins have replaced most cash. Transactions are instant and frictionless. So it looks great, right?
Yeah.
The system is marketed as safer, cheaper, and more equitable than the old banking system. And in narrow transaction terms, it is. Income arrives punctually, bills are paid automatically, fraud is nearly eliminated because every transaction is traceable. This is presented accurately as an improvement over what happened before. In some ways, it looks great. Programmable money guardrails are framed, programmable money, the algorithm is framed as consumer protection. know your customer and all of that, but there isn't a human being involved in applying it in a way that makes sense. In terms of health and surveillance, you've got wearables that track your sleep, your heart rate, your glucose, your mood, and the data feeds into AI that that goes into health assessment of health risks, and you end up with a certain amount of social isolation, and the answer is what? Drugs to make you feel better about that queasy feeling that you're being controlled and that things aren't quite right. Vaccine compliance, dietary adherence, exercise metrics are quietly incorporated into insurance tiers, right? Information environment, you've got the media unified not by censorship, but by algorithmic curation. So effective that most people never encounter serious dissent. You've got political life. You think they're elections, and they aren't necessarily manipulated in the sense we think of it, but they occur on schedule. The results are certified. Most people think they have choices, but there aren't really. But the range of variable candidates is shaped upstream somewhere above, and you don't know that all of the things that you might have really liked have been filtered out before you ever get to see it. Dissent is managed through co-optation. I'm not sure what that word is, but critics are given podcasts. They're bought off. The critics are bought off with, book deals or whatever. And so the system looks like it's working. You've got community, but it's mediated. It's fake. And there's it's hard to recognize what you've lost, but what you've lost in this Truman scenario is personal sovereignty, anonymous transactions, knowledge of what is real, and happiness is you're living in manufactured reality, and it's not real happiness. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Do we recognize that as part of our lives?
100%, and I remember hearing years ago how, we're enslaved, but it's changed and it's much worse today than it was even, let's say, 150 years ago, 200 years ago, because at least 200 years ago, room and board was provided. But now you're enslaved and you have to provide your own room and board. I thought, oh, that's really kind of fascinating. But nonetheless, this is the reality that we're in. And, again, I think people are starting to really look at it and see it for the first time. And COVID really pushed that needle. And I'm actually kind of grateful for that. So, yeah, it's spot on. It's spot on.
You know what really creeps me out? Sorry if this is just a little off here, but I just really I need to say this. So last Sunday at 7 o'clock in the morning, I drove about, I don't know, 10 miles to go and get something. And there was no cars on the road apart from I passed 3 cars, no driver, with something going around. And as I pulled up, it pulled up, and you could see. I don't know what these cars are doing, Renee. Maybe you do. You could see it was like, and looking at me in the car, and it was super creepy. I then got to my destination, which happened to be Whole Foods. Don't scream at me. I had to go in there. And I walked in there. It was really early in the morning. There was a couple of people doing the fruit and stuff. And there was 2 robots just going up and down the aisles. And I just thought, this is the creepiest morning I've had in a long time. There's really very few humans around. I've seen more robots than humans.
That's Waymo. And it's interesting about it because I was in the city, San Francisco, last weekend, and I had gone into a Waymo a couple of times. You're going to love this. Not because I would, but because we're with family. Like, oh, we got to jump in, and I'm like, okay, I actually want to experience Waymo. It's like I want to know what it's like on the inside. So, a couple different things. One is that it is sending out a 5G frequency on every single corner, right? So when you look at the screen, you're actually seeing the people walking. They almost look like ghosts. So you see all the cars, exactly how they're shaped. You see all the people, whether they're walking, stopping, standing, talking. They're all on the screen. Like, it's really very surreal and quite freaky. But what's fascinating is as we were driving on Waymo, inside, we're having a conversation, and we happen to talk about vaccines, how we don't take any kind of vaccine. And when my partner did, she, got the thyroid issue right after she got the flu shot, and the Waymo stopped dead in the middle of the street. It would not continue driving.
Are you kidding me?
Not at all. And we just sat there and we looked at each other and we're like, and it just sat there for like a minute, and the traffic's going, and we're like, I'm glad I have witnesses, but yes, that's what happened. And we're like, what are the chances of that? It literally stopped dead. And and those things are hot, hot, hot. In fact, when I'm sitting inside of them, because I am sensitive, my ears start to get really hot. I feel pressure in my head, and I'm like, oh, I was cooking in there, and I know it cooks. But I just have to tell you that the chances of it's never happened before or since. We went another time and never had that happen. So yeah, you're kind of looking at the future right now, and we do have family that use their Apple Pay, they use Waymo. We're like, stop, and it has not sunk into them yet what it is that it's literally like the gilded cage, and they don't realize this. So that kind of awareness is really, really important. Like, do not participate. Just do what your grandparents did, and we talk about this. It's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to be. It's like, look back to your great grandparents. How did they live? Did they have barn raisings? Did they have dinners with the family? I mean, did they have certain skill sets and, grow their own food? It's not radical. I mean, maybe it is. It's so radical, it's old fashioned, but seriously, I really encourage people to kind of look back to see what their great grandparents, were doing if you're a little bit afraid of what your future could look like. And that's really what your goal is to kind of, go backwards a little bit and not participate in this, because it is a digital gilded cage.
Okay,
Right.
but what is Waymo? I need to wind back a bit. Those cars I saw did not have people in them. They were just creeping around the streets.
That's what they would do. They drive around until somebody says, pick me up, and then zoom, and then they're there in a flat second. I mean, Uber, all the other ones, those cars, they're more expensive to rent, but they're there like in a flat second, and they just cruise around. They cruise around. And there's so many dangers to them, right? Like, for instance, one time, one of the Waymos with a customer inside was driving through a shootout with the police and a criminal in San Francisco. And the darn thing was driving right between the shootout. And the Waymo couldn't differentiate that, couldn't see that. Another time they stop, block traffic, and nobody can move it. A police officer's trying to move the car. They can't. So there's a ton of different dangerous scenarios with these darn things. And also, you just, people are losing their jobs, right? Uber drivers and so on, and Lyft, they're losing their jobs, and taxi drivers. So again, I just really encourage people it's so convenient. It's so easy. It's like, yeah, but not in the end, right? Not in the end.
And the robots in Whole Foods, it said, I looked at it, it's kind of creeped me out. Yeah. It stops and looks at you, and it's like, I'm an inventory taker or something. We need humans to be doing that, not weird stick robots that are creeping up behind you when you're trying to stop.
Well, and it's like the frog in the pot, the boiling pot. Gradually, we don't realize how dehumanizing all of this is, and just the idea, I stand in long lines to go to a cashier rather than going through the automatic pay aisle, and they put it in Lowe's or Home Depot, they put it at the very end of the store. So you have to walk half a mile to get to a cashier, and you've got all these people in line, and you talk to the cashiers about it and you say, but people don't want this, do they? This automatic stuff. And they say, yeah, but nobody cares. They're not serving the public and what the consumers want.
Well, this is why we do this show, is to educate people. Seriously, this is why we do the show. It's like, okay, folks, you may not be seeing this. Let's lay it out so you can make real conscious choices and realize that, the reality that you're being presented, like, oh, great, you'll have robots doing everything. No more need for humans. It'll be wonderful. And you'll get your monthly stipend, and, you'll own nothing, and it'll be wonderful. And that is the Truman Show that's being presented to all of us. And when you look underneath, right, when you look on the wings of the set, it's a whole different picture, and that's what we're trying to really expose here on this show.
Yeah, right. I think we're doing a great job on Financial Rebellion, but we're not getting there. I mean, I'm just going to use this other scenario. I recently traveled to DC, and I've traveled with some film crew people, and I just looked at the whole lines of the airport, and there's big signs saying opt out. Not one person opted out, except for this guy who people were sort of standing back from him because he had headphones on and he was dressed kind of weirdly. He opted out. The one guy that everyone was freaking out about, he opted out. I watched him. I was so proud of him. I wanted to go and buy him a drink. What a good guy. But the film crew I was with didn't want to make a fuss. So that you know, see,
social pressure. It's the social pressure of going along with things.
And I told them, I was like, watch me, stand behind me, watch me and do what I do. And so, but they were scared. And I heard one of them go, is it all right if I do the same as her and opt out? I'm like, mate, it says opt out right above there. You can do it. And look, he was fine. He's like, sure, he doesn't care.
I'm shocked that film crew doesn't know that. I'm a little bit surprised, actually, especially hanging with you for a while.
Yeah, these are young people, though, right?
Well, some are young, some are not. But
Yeah.
the point is that if they don't get it, and these are people, as Renette knows, that are close to me, then we've still got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, I opt out all the time. There's one time I could not on a trip back to New York, and because I was going to miss my plane. I had no option. And that was the only time I ever went through one of those damn millimeter wave machines because I just opt out. We always come an extra 20 minutes, half hour, easy, just to opt out. And we're very nice. And sometimes people even ask, why are you doing this? And you'll say, well, TSA, employees, you have cancer clusters because those things are radiating out, blah, blah, blah. And they'll look at you like this. But we always opt out. And again, it's just, action speaks louder than words, and people really do. If they ask, why are you doing that or what's going on, we'll explain it to them, and I'll say to people, I'm from this industry. I know what those things really do. Now, mind you, I used to have a cell phone store back in 1990 where I sold Motorola bag phones. So I'm kind of from the industry, but I try to talk like I'm from the industry to let people know, like, well, I'm from that industry, so I really know. And I do know because I've studied it enough, but these folks have no clue. So, really setting the example, being at the store and not using the QR code, not going through the checkout without the human and using cash. A lot of times I'll say to people like, I'm trying to use cash more these days because this and that. And I'm talking to the person behind me. When people are like, what can I do? Having simple conversations as you go throughout your day, or if you've got your cash and you're going like this, and explain to people why you're doing that. You're planting seeds. You're planting seeds, and that's your job right now. Just keep planting seeds, and and set the example. Like really walk and talk and be the example.
I will say that the good news is more places I've been going to lately in the last month, I would say the cashiers are saying cash or card to me. And I was like, thank you. I haven't heard that for ages. And they're like, well, sure, cash or card, what's it going to be? And so I'm seeing more of that coming. I'm so excited about that. And just one more thing on that opting out. I'm not so much talking about the radiation thing. I'm talking about that beginning bit with the passport when you come up with your facial recognition.
Oh.
That bit is a big sign saying opt out.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, they don't know you
have to say that. You have to say that early on before you give them your passport or your ID. You have to say, I want to opt out. Because if you wait until you give it to them, they say, oh, it's too late. It's already happened.
Yes, 100%. And I do that too, for sure. Yeah. You just be really nice. Say, I'm opting out. And for the most part, they're fine with it. They're perfectly fine with it.
I have a story that I have to tell you. This is so bizarre. We have someone who wrote into us and said that she went to the bank. It's a longer story, but she went to the bank and the cashier said they needed to take a picture of her and of her mouth. And she said, why do you need my mouth? And the teller said, I don't know, let me find out, and goes in and, sends an email to somebody within the system and comes back and says, that's so that they can tell that you're not a robot. Because robots don't have teeth.
What bank was that?
And this was in a credit union. It wasn't at JP Morgan Chase. It was at a credit union, wanting to take a picture of the mouth. This is what the digital ID is. If you're not doing things in person and you're having to show who you are, this is where they're going. And of course, they're using the ruse that we're protecting children. So we have to prove that we're not children. And the only way to do that is through a digital, through biometrics and digital IDs. And, it's.
Yeah. Well, Brunette.
Yes. So I want to talk about, what they present. We're talking about the Truman Show and how it's all beautifully packaged and what it really is. And, like when they talk about like the slow streets or the 15-minute cities, I think it's really important for people to know that they're presenting the Truman Show, but really what these things do is they completely control your freedom of movement, right? And you get a ranking, a score, a credit score, where this is how far you can travel or how many times you can travel or where you can travel, and zone restrictions. Like in California, they have these new lanes that are essentially you pay so much to travel on it per mile, which is a complete, actually, constitutional violation, to be quite honest. And so this is what the 15 minutes present. It's like, it's not like, oh, it's so sweet and you're building community. It's like, no, you're going to have restriction of movement based upon, your behavior. And there's also like this taking clause, like the slow streets. They're taking little streets where you can't travel down them any longer. And there's only certain activity allowed on it. And this is kind of really how they're kind of they're slowly introducing the concept of 15-minute cities. It's like one little block at a time. And while years ago, I always truly, to be honest, as an advocate, I always loved the idea of slow streets. Like, hey, let's have walk and let's bike, and that's the Truman version. Isn't that sweet? But when you look at the underbelly, you realize it's something else. And so, what we should be asking for is equal protection, right? Everyone has the right to travel down the streets unimpeded and not being charged or based upon your behavior. You've behaved here, you have not behaved there, therefore you can pass. So, this is really, this is like a due process, right? So if you do or don't have access to certain zones or services or financial transactions, right? It's all being connected to your behavior. And this is what the 15-minute cities is all about. And again, they're presenting it as a Truman Show. It's lovely and everything's perfect and under control and you're free and you're not bound to anything. It's like, no, it's actually, it's all a facade. So, and this is stuff that, is being dictated by unelected individuals, right? Whether it's the UN or it's the, WEF, they're way up here, and it literally comes all the way down to the local level. And it is being manifested through local ordinances, through planning and zoning. And it's really, really important. If you're wondering, what can I possibly do? One of the best things you can do is make the correlation, the connection when you go to your city council meetings or county supervisory meetings and say, hey, look, I don't think you realize what you're implementing here. I don't think you realize what you're doing here. And what happens is the local people are literally signing the paper, signing your future away, and even the next representatives, they've signed off. So you have different, city council members, but it was already signed off. The contract has been made, and they don't realize what it is that they're signing off. Like with the flock cameras, it's all we need to do right now is go into the city council meetings and say, okay, you've now been made aware of these constitutional violations that are being committed. Every time somebody drives by these flock cameras, you are now responsible for this, right? You cannot sit there and feign innocence or ignorance. That is not a good enough reason. And so when people are wondering, like, what can I possibly do? One of the first things you do is you put your elected officials on notice saying, hey, and that's happening here, Grass Valley, California, the city next door to me. Polly was here recently, and they had people show up, talk about the flock cameras, saying, you know what it's about. We don't want this. The police chief got up and said, okay, we're going to have a special meeting. Sounded to me like the meeting was really about, like, we're going to be transparent and just tell you why we're doing this and we're going to continue to do this. But nonetheless, you got to go back and pressure them. There is no reason for your elected officials to allow a surveillance mechanism that is privately owned, that is not for your benefit, to continue to do what it's doing. Put them on notice, and then you can go from there. And they can get sued. They can get a lot of hot water. And you can start also by doing your freedom of information requests or public records requests and get information. And you'll be shocked by what you find. You'll be shocked by how many cameras are in your community, by the way, which they've done here locally.
We do something called Ask Catherine. We get our subscribers write in and ask questions. And very often one of the question that comes up almost every time we record is, where do I go to get away from all this? And the other one is, when is it coming? When are we going to lose everything? When are these things happening? And what we keep saying is, you're in the middle of it right now, and there is nowhere to go. Where
Well,
there
who's
is to
saying,
go
who's
is
saying
local.
Idaho?
Hmm?
Lou, our producer, has just written Idaho in the chat. So is that a good place?
Well, there are varying degrees of takeover in, there are better places, better jurisdictions and worse jurisdictions. That's another question that often comes up, where do I move in the United States? But the fact is that ultimately it's creeping in, and I don't think that the answer is in local community, and the safety is in knowing that there are people who have your back, that there are people who grow food and have access, and therefore when the systems collapse because the Strait of Hormuz is shut down, that there are people who know what to do. And the idea is that you take an inventory of what you have to give, and maybe it's your time going to council meetings and reporting back to a group of people.
Right.
And then, who's a good plumber, who's a good electrician, who knows about zoning, who knows about the physical environment and can say what the effects of what the proposals are, who knows about the utilities and how all that works with the smart meters, and how do you opt out of the smart meters? So the only way to do that is to get together in a group. We can't do it alone.
Yeah. Well, and there are things that you can do to really to ensure. So for instance, get a couple people together. You don't need the whole entire community to do this. Just get a few people together. And again, you can actually audit your city. You can audit for any of the livability grants they have, like, oh, this is livability grants here. It's for the slow streets. It's for this, it's for that. And see what kind of smart city programs they have going. If they're receiving any money, you can do that with public, a public records request. You can do that with a FOIA, right? A Freedom of Information request. You can actually go in there and say, okay, anything that's smart city related, a livability related. And again, decades ago, livability sounded really good to me. That was a Truman Show veneer. So you got to get beyond that and see underneath, and then you realize that here's the strings that are attached. And then also make sure that your city or county are refusing what's called like C40 membership, right? Or the equivalent, right? This is the framework at the upper level for cities, the local level. So you can also too, by the way, pass like a local freedom movement resolution saying, hey, we're affirming our residents, right to travel without digital restrictions or zone-based, penalties and so on. And so you can start putting these things into place right now, and perhaps your city already has it rolling, but maybe not. But the other thing you're doing is you're planting the seed of awareness within your city council members, like, ooh, this is an issue, this is a thing. So, and then you also just require that your city council, they vote, they have to vote on surveillance infrastructure and cameras and smart meters and all these different things. Like, no, you guys got to bring this forward. We must have public comment. You don't put it under consent item where it's just kind of brushed under the rug. That you actually, any surveillance, anything must come to the city council and allow for public comment, period. And then you also can kind of demand these sovereignty clauses as well, where it's like, look at anything in any kind of contract, your city stays in control, right? It's not the corporation, it's not the private entity, but your city is in control of these cameras. And so these are things that you can do right now out the gate and get ahead of it. Or you can start saying, okay, we're doing a public records request or a FOIA, and we're going to find out what you already have. And then we're going to bring a report to the city and say, what are you going to do about it?
Well, yeah, Renette, the other thing, though, is that a lot of cases, they're particularly in connection with the data centers, but I suspect also on flock camera type things, they're signing NDA agreements. So the local officials have agreed not to disclose to the local citizenry. And a lot of times they will, there are reasons that they can't withhold it from the public forever, but they'll have, like in Florida, a year-long period of time when they can be planning for these data centers, and the local people don't know anything about it. I assume that if they go to the council meetings and they really stay on top of what's really going on that's not reported in the media, that they can see signs that these things are happening and get on board to stop what's going on before it's too late. Because if they've been putting money into data centers and buying the land and making deals with the local farmers for a year, how are you going to wind that back?
So I have a question for you. Excuse me for my naivete. In California, we have what's called the Brown Act. Do you guys have what's called the Brown Act in your cities? Would it be considered a Brown Act
We may
violation?
have it, but it's not, as far as I know, called the Brown Act.
The Brown Act, so basically, there can be no official, no city business, no county business, no, your representatives, your elected representatives cannot make a decision behind closed doors, right? The Brown Act is like every decision made has to be, city council agendized.
Yes, there are levels of that.
Okay,
required in different places. Yeah. Like city council members can't have private conversations and
make decisions behind closed doors on their own. It has to be all forward, right? In the public domain. So the thing is, when I see somebody signing an NDA and you don't know about it, and 2 years later, here comes the data center. It's like there's got to be some type of a Brown Act violation, and if that's the case, then you've got to go after them. I mean, that is like a state attorney, general that can deal with this as well. But this is whatever you have to find out in your state. What is it called? California, it's the Brown Act. What is it in your state? And I guarantee you, your elected officials cannot be making these decisions behind closed doors, and they certainly cannot be signing NDAs. Right. And doing all this, so whatever your state is, whatever that law is, you've got to find it. Because when I hear about this, I'm like, we can't be the only state in America that has a Brown Act type of violation, or clause.
Another thing that I saw just this last week, Maria Z had a show, and she was taking information that Erin Brockovich is collecting on where the data centers are going. Erin Brockovich, what was the name of the movie that was made about her?
Erin Brockovich.
Oh, okay. She was basically worked within a big law firm, and that took on a case that had to do with pollution. And she was, quite an activist, and she's continued to be an activist. So she's got contacts in all the big law firms that have big tort suits for injuries from poisoning and things. Well, her latest thing is to collect information. It's kind of like the DFlock website that shows where all the flock cameras are. Well, she's inviting people to provide information to her about, and she has a website about what's going on with the data centers. And Maria Z took that information and mapped it against the water tables, and also other information, and you could 15-minute cities. And so what the theory is that they're putting, I mean, it's clear that they're putting data centers in the rural areas, but what that causes is people to want to leave the rural areas. I mean, if you've got a sound that's 24/7, near
Forcing you out,
you're going to move away, right? So they're getting people to move into the cities, and we've got at the same time the 30 by 30 plan to take a lot of the land in the United States out of circulation and have it be,
wildlife zones,
and not available for development of coal and oil and cattle and all of that. So you've got all these things happening at the same time, and people are unaware of it. But that feeds into the 15-minute cities, because if everybody's flocking into the cities, and then we've got all these rules enforced at the local level under the 15-minute cities scenario. So why don't you tell us in the last period of time that we have, unless Polly has a question or comment, about how technology can be used in a positive way in the pushback scenario where we have localized activity, and we do have technology, but we use it in a way that is not letting in the centralization from above and having our data all over the place. Have you thought about that at all? Because there are lots of things. I mean, you could have barter networks and you have it on your local computer, and you've got whatever safeguards to keep it private, and you're not going through Google tools and things like that so that it gets out. And you could have local barter networks that are facilitated through technology.
Right. I mean, Okay, so the thing is you've been talking about is decentralization is key, right? If you're centralized, that means there's somebody that's going to be controlling and collecting that data. So you want to make sure it's as local and regional as possible. And and I do know that there's also, and I'm not an affiliate, but I know there's like certain phones, like what's called the above phone.
Right.
I think there's a price range like around $700-800, the base price. And I'm looking at, okay, I'm going to save up for that because I'm tired. I want to be de-Google-fied, right? So
Right.
I'm going to save up, you can get all the apps, everything you need is available on the above phone. So you're not having to go back, into the dark ages with an old type of phone. And so I want to use that. Like the first thing I want to do is just like stop spying on me. Like I don't want to be tracked. I have to worry about, having my phone off and tucked away in a room so you can't overhear my conversation. And so that's a great place to start right there. And then the other thing is too, is that, we have our group of mama warriors that started when COVID, and we were having weekly potlucks for like 4 years every Monday. And one of the things we did is we went out and we got these, this is a Kenwood two-way radio. And so we all have this. These are refurbished, has a little base where it charges up and the charge lasts forever. We got like an extra foot-long antenna here, right? So our group has our own little channel. I mean, we went to a little local communication kind of two-way radio, ham radio operator that sells them and repairs them and said, hey, we've got these and can you please go through. And what he did was he actually created a channel or a series of channels so we have law enforcement, we have Grass Valley, Nevada City Law, we have the fire departments, we have the weather channel. Then we have two different specific channels. One is for a general channel that anyone, can jump onto and just talk and communicate. But then we actually have our own private channel for our group only. And that costs us like $25 a year to pay for. And so we check it out every now and then. I've used this and I've gotten a range of like 13, 14 miles in a hilly area. So this is one of the things you can do too. So if the grid goes down, if communication goes down, if cell towers go down, you have this. And it's just nice and also if there's an emergency and you hear sirens going off, you can actually jump on there and hear what's going on. So there's things like that you can do. So yeah, so when it comes to technology, things like this, right? Get off the stuff that's spying on you.
And mesh networks also.
No,
I'm not
so
quite sure how mesh networks work, but it's kind of like on sidestepping the internet or using the connectivity of somebody near you, and the signal goes from one place that has
100%. It is decentralized. So you're communicating within your community and your region, which is fantastic, right? That's what you want to do. So I said, and we have someone locally who does that. He has his own antennas. He puts them up on trees, and that's what he's doing, which is actually a great idea. So, and the thing is, this is that it's just like anything, you guys, like AI. It's not necessarily bad. It's how you use it, right? Like water can bring you life, right? It gives you you're dependent upon water, but you also could be, your head could be dunked underwater and you could be drowned in it. So it's how it is used. Like for instance, drones can be great for instance, when our power outages, we have them, take a drone and go over the lines to make sure a fire hasn't been started. Someone is missing, someone is lost. They've gone down the river. You can use drones for search and rescue. Fantastic, right? You can also, if there's any kind of, roadway blockage or something going on, there's so many different things you can use it for. Cattlemen can use it to check out why they've lost a cow. Where's their cow? Where's their goat? What's happening? There's all these great ways, right? But again, decentralized, local, regional, centralization and also local control. That's really what's key here. But that's not what we're dealing with. We have a decentralized beast out there that's surveilling and watching everything and collecting that data on all of us. And then we're gonna get that score, that ranking, that social, credit score. That's where the danger is. So there's all these different things that you can do. And then when it comes to just, building up your local economy and so on, there's so many things that you can do too. Like for instance, farmers market is huge. Investing in like, what's called CSA, that's community supported agriculture. And that's where you get like, during the harvest, you get a basket every single week. But what you do is you invest on the upfront. So the farm has money to, plant and to grow and so on and harvest. And then you just start, you get, a basket for the whole entire season, like once a week. It's really lovely. Getting together with people are like, I don't know where to start. Well, you just start having conversations. As again, it could be at the checker, when you're checking out and you've got cash. You say, oh, yeah, I love using cash. I don't really like all the surveillance going on with my card. And just kind of drop that seed. And speaking of seeds, you can also start seed banks where you have little potlucks and you come together and you say, well, what kind of seeds do you have? Well, I have this and I have that. And you share seeds. You share tips on how to grow, gardens. You check in with your local government. Are chickens allowed? Are goats allowed? Right? And can our city plant more edible landscape? Can we have pear trees and apple trees here and there and so on? There's all these different things that you can do, and it's fun, right? It's fun. So yeah, you want to use digital stuff, and you want to use, you can use all these systems and this advanced technology, but again, if it is not decentralized and in the hands and control of your local government, right, and there's a lot of transparency built around it, where you can see what it's doing, what it's collecting, and so on, and making sure it's not being abused, right? Great. But other than that, you really want to just really build out your local economy and really look at yourself as like, what are my assets? What are the assets of my property? What can it produce? And we talked about this yesterday, Carolyn. We were talking about, people were saying, I don't know what to do in this world. Like where do I start? You really have to do, you have to really surveil your own life and your own skills, and do an analysis on your own property. Can I grow food here? Can I have chickens here? Can I barter? Or better yet, a time bank. Can we start a time bank, as we've just discussed before? So all these different things that you can do. And when you get overwhelmed, like, I don't know where to start, folks, this is when you call in your church members or the parents at your school or your neighbors, and you have a little potluck and you talk about these things, and even if they don't want to go down the surveillance conversation, people are really interested in gardening right now. People are really interested in growing their own food, and they don't know where to start. So having potlucks and just not even going down, like, have you been watching Catherine Austin Fitts on, on Financial Rebellion? Just don't even go there. Just talk about, hey, I want to grow food. Where's the best place to have a community garden? Who's the one who has the skill set? Where's the plot of land? Don't even go down that. Just build up your community and start with that conversation. And I'm telling you, people want to grow their food.
Well, the other thing is, some of us, I happen to have an acre of land, which is not that many feet outside a city limit and an exit off of a major highway. And it's a burden for me to take care of it. I'm working all the time. There are people out there who would like to grow things who don't have the land. And so, building up a network of people, there has to be a way. And I've heard people advertise for, I have this property. I'm willing to share the fruits of your labor. If you'll share the fruits of your labor and take care of my property, you can come on and, it's sort of yours to control.
Well, if you want to be clever, for many years, we had something called the Living Lands Agrarian Network. And what they did was they'd have a farmer go out to someone's piece of land they had, saying, hey, I've got this land similar to you, Carolyn, and I would love for someone to farm it, but I'm too old. I don't have the skills. I don't have the time. And what they would do is they have a farmer go out and they do an analysis of the soil. They look at the sun. They look at the tree lines. They would look at the water access and so on. And they put that into a database. And then the farmers would come along and they say, okay, where do you live? What are you looking at? How much land? What do you want to grow? And they'd match the farmers to the land.
Good use of technology at the local level, right?
100%. So if you're like, I want to do something, but I don't know what to do. Well, maybe you don't have the land. Maybe you aren't the farmer, but maybe you're the person that could start the nonprofit that creates a database that matches the land to the farmer. Right. So, there's all these different things you can do. We have a woman here who is a bee whisperer. She's extraordinary. She actually communicates with the wild bees, and she collects the hive with her bare hands, and she collects them and she puts them into, the little, the bee colonies. She puts them into their boxes. And what she does is she trains people beforehand how to communicate with the bees, how to know when they're ill, when they're suffering, when they're overheated, what's going on with their colonies. And then she places those hives on their property after they've been trained. So there's all these extraordinary, creative, beautiful ways. And the more like on a spiritual level, the more that you can tend to something, right? Whether it be medicinal, herbal garden, or your produce garden, or your chickens, and that's just your job. Is you're really an expert in one or two different fields, and then your neighbor's an expert in another couple different fields, and then you can barter back and forth. That's what it is. It's not like you have to do everything. You have to have the goats and the milk and all the produce and all the this and the that. And it's like, no, you just take on a couple different little things. You become an expert in that field. Then your neighbor does that, and another neighbor does something else. And then that way you can barter, and you don't get overwhelmed by having to take on the whole entire world in existence. Like, I've got to grow everything. No, you don't.
And we're out of time.
There you go.
We are out of time, but that was really fascinating. We need to do more on things like this. Well, thank you, Vanette, and thank you, Carolyn. It was a great show today. I really enjoyed it. And we'll be back next week. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
My name is Cheryl Kilman.
And how many children have you got?
I have 4 children.
And this is the stories about them?
Yes.
Okay, so take us back and start with the first.
The first one?
First, yeah.
My oldest daughter is 46 years old, and she has been a nurse for probably 21 years. And she's had forced vaccines in order to keep her job all these 21 years, and developed lupus and neutropenia and some other things. At one time Vanderbilt thought that she had leukemia. She has a lot of health issues from this.
Does she realize as a nurse it's from the vaccines?
She does now, yes. She was like the rest of the medical community, pretty much thought everything was safe because that's what she believed in and that's what her job was, until she started having the health issues and then realized that they were caused from that. But in order to keep your job, there were certain ones that you had to participate in each year.
So she won't have any more now that she's understanding what it is?
No.
No matter what?
No. A year and a half ago, she had her yearly TB skin test. And within 15 or 20 minutes of having that TB skin test, she had a seizure and was in very dire shape and could not breathe. So she no longer even has the TB skin test.
And in fact, that's a very good point that you bring up. So viewers, if you're listening, this is a big warning about the TB skin test. Do you know any more about that you can tell us? I mean, it's like they say it's a vaccine. They don't tell you that. And
she had one for every year for 20 years, or ever how long she's been, a nurse. But this particular one, I don't know if they changed the ingredients in it or whatever. But it basically is a vaccine, and she reacted horribly to it.
Yeah, and especially if you're trying to get into America through immigration, they will make you have this. So I just want to put that in there.
Yes. Okay,
so your poor daughter, does your daughter have children?
She does, and a couple of my granddaughters have had reactions to different vaccines. My granddaughter spaced out my great-granddaughter's vaccines, and when she got the MMR, she developed psoriasis. My granddaughter developed hives all over from the DTP shot. And then my youngest son, he is 21. He has severe nonverbal autism, but it's from vaccine injury. He hit all of his milestones very early. At 2 months, 4 months, and 6 months when I got his vaccines, because I was the trusting parent. My other children were so much older than him. In the 80s, when they got vaccines, they got 3 or 4, and they got them whenever I decided to take them to the health department to get them. Now, the children get 50, 60, 70, I don't even know the number. At 2 months, 4 months, and 6 months, he reacted to those with a high fever, screaming, very lethargic. So I pushed out the 12 months vaccines till he was about 20 months old. And at 20 months, he had about 50 words and was almost potty trained. He got 7 vaccines that day. And after that day, he screamed for 2 days. He had a very high fever. He would stiffen up, and I guess it was some sort of seizure. I was dismissed at the ER and at the pediatrician's office as being a older, overprotective mother. But since he was 20 months old, he never spoke another word until he was about 4.5. Now he's 21. He has severe autism. He has many health issues. He has PANDAS, which is strep that crosses the blood-brain barrier, and that's all just because the vaccines wiped out his immune system. He has Lyme. He lost his eyesight 2 years ago, is completely blind.
Right.
Very, very severe behavioral problems. Has many doctors at Vanderbilt. A lot of brain inflammation that still goes on to this day. We treat brain inflammation constantly.
Are you a medical doctor?
No.
You mean we treat your sons?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
That's really sad.
yes. Now my husband is a nurse practitioner. My daughter's a nurse. The medical interventions are not anything new to me, but the medical community as a whole pretty much dismisses anything that was caused from, the vaccines.
Yeah, I mean, you're really on your own.
Yeah, you are.
And like all of us, we worry about what happens to our children when they're no longer around.
Right, because nobody's going to love my son or do for my son like I do. And me and my husband are both older. We were in our 40s when he was born. And yeah, I have other children, but to ask them to take on what I deal with on a daily basis, I spend my whole day taking care of him and making doctor's appointments, fighting with insurance to cover things, researching new things that might help him. We've done supplements, we've done HBOT treatments, we've done chelation through the years. He's not conversational now, but he can tell you what he wants. And he can tell you a whole Disney movie, word for word, but he can't tell you his head hurts.
That's a sad reality of vaccine injury.
It is.
You are on your own.
And there, a lot of kids like my son have severe behavioral problems due to the brain inflammation. And group homes, I've got a lot of friends, that have kids like I have, because when you have kids like I have, all your friends become the same kind of moms. That's your village. And our kids don't qualify for group homes when we're gone because of their behavior. There's been kids that are kicked out of the group homes that are for severely autistic children and adults. They get kicked out because of their behavior.
And where do they go then?
Your guess is as good as mine. There needs to be nursing home type facilities that are just for these adults that have autism and have severe behavior problems. And with the rate of autism increasing every year, every time the vaccine schedule increases, there's going to be more of a need. It's not fair to put them in a nursing home. It's not fair to them, and it's not fair to the people that are in the nursing home that are living out the last days of their life in quiet and peace, because there's not always quiet and peace.
There's hardly ever quiet
Right.
and peace, let's be honest.
Right.
Okay, you raised some very valid points that the world needs to be discussing, not just the vaccine injury, but also what's going to happen to the vaccine injured.
Right.
Anybody else in your family injured?
No, my husband was forced to take the COVID vaccine to keep his job.
Is he military?
No, but he does work at the VA here.
Mm-hmm. How's he doing on his vaccine?
Pretty good. We did a lot of vitamin C and glutathione, and
He doesn't have to have any more, though.
no, we prepared him for it and after, so
Anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. I appreciate what y'all are doing to bring awareness, because there's not a lot of awareness.
Oh, no, but I appreciate you sitting there and talking, especially talking about adults with vaccine injury.
There's no place for them, and it's sad. There needs to be facilities.
It does.
Thank you.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.